Hey, welcome to episode 12 of this Christ Consciousness series from the Sermon on the Mount. As we've been diving into some of these teachings and hopefully getting a little bit closer to the original intent that's going to help us take this and put it in context for our life so that we're living in that love, joy, and peace. And this section, Matthew 7:15 through 23, is true or false. I don't know if you played that growing up where you were trying to catch somebody in a lie, or maybe it was just a straight trivia game, but we always played it on a lie, like who was going to get caught, who was going to get away in the process of being able to fool the other person. So there's a little bit of foolery going on here, and Jesus is going to be pointing out how you recognize who's telling the truth and who isn't, especially when it comes to things related to religion and spirituality. My name is Paul Evans. I am a student of Scripture and spirituality and been that way since about, well, let's just say the 1900s, or 1970s, 1980s. If you don't mind, go ahead and subscribe to this channel to get this and then other videos that I'm releasing that are about positive psychology, some of the tools and resources we can use in our life to create and sustain happiness, things along those lines. But let's get into the text. Starting verse 15, watch out for those false prophets, those who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. I remember one version said ravenous, almost went there. I must have had that memorized. By their fruit you will recognize them. Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Likewise, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus, by their fruit, you will recognize them. And when he says these things, this is such common sense, right? When the Christ mentions these elements, everybody's going, yes, obviously, that's exactly what happens to a tree. And he's saying, really? People who are out there sharing things are trees, and you find out that there are some people who are going to come and look like they've got your best intention at heart, but it's really about them and what they are going to gain. So he says, be careful of false prophets. Be careful of people who come and say, hey, here's a word from God. You need to listen to this. You need to do this. And that's one of the things that I've tried to stress throughout the series. I am not a religious scholar. I'm not a spiritual scholar. I'm one who has experienced spirituality in my own way and things that I've discovered both in scripture and just the day-to-day walk. And so I'm not here to say, here's what you've got to believe, and I'm being the good guy, and hopefully you want to be like me. In fact, I would say the opposite. I wouldn't necessarily emulate me, but the things that are in these passages, this Christ consciousness is something that is really going to be helpful to us, and especially when it comes to believing other people and what is the core of that. And so what evidence do we see in the lives of other people? We usually gather evidence through what they say, what they do, and even their reputation somewhat. So when people are using words that sound right, but then you're looking out at their actions and you're going, you know what, those don't match. That's not congruent. That's not in alignment. Or when things sound too good to be true in business, I listen to a lot of conversations and help people interpret whether or not what's being said is actual. And I was in a meeting recently where everything was amazing. There's a company that was getting acquired and the leader was talking about how amazing everything is. Nobody's losing their job. Nobody's getting a pay cut. Everybody's getting a pay raise. On and on and on it went, and it was amazing. And afterwards, I was talking to some of the leaders and we were picking that apart a little bit. And I said, so everything's amazing. They said, yeah, it's filled up with promises. I said, it is filled up with promises. I said, so how long since you got a raise? And they said, well, it's been several years. I said, so, okay, this raise that you're getting, is it return to what you got before, or is it going to catch you up and give you even more? And they were like, well, I don't know. I said, yeah, it was presented like everything's amazing, but it doesn't matter because you're not getting those last 3 years back. When it comes to nobody's taking a pay cut. And they said, yeah, that's pretty awesome because, you know, all these other deals that have gotten done, they've taken a pay cut. I said, do you know why? And they said, why? Because you're paid 25% less than the average. Those people were paid 25 to 50% more. So it had to come back. It had to be brought back to the norm, to be normalized. You're not even at the normal pay. You're living your pay cut. And I wasn't trying to disparage the leader, but it was kind of that true and false test. It sounded great. I mean, he was one of the sheep. But the truth is, he's going to profit more than anybody. Same thing here when it comes to teachings. When somebody comes in with that great word, that great prophecy about your life, let's be wise. Let's sit with it. Let's test it. He goes on to say, hey, by the fruit, you're going to recognize things by fruit. And what's the fruit of the Spirit? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. There we go. Those that are listed in Galatians chapter 5. So that's the fruit. So if you go to Galatians chapter 5, toward the end of the chapter, it's going to list the fruit of the Spirit. So this person who you're trying to figure out if you should listen, if you should pay attention, are they filled with love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control? Is that their life? And if not, then maybe there's a pullback on that. So that's I hear Hercules. Hercules is our miniature Dotson. I need to put him on camera at some point, but he's over here guarding the house, and somebody is obviously outside, and he's going to be barking here in a second. So we're just going to live through that because I don't edit. True and false disciples. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? Then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers. Let me get him. Come here, Hurt. Come here. Come here, buddy. There we go. Come here. 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 Hey, buddy. Here he is. Here's this dangerous guard dog right here. Hey, buddy. Hey. I know it. I know it. You did a good job. You did such a good job. We got some kids playing in the neighborhood. Just sit right here. So, as far as whether or not this person is good or evil, or we did many wonderful works in your name, we did so much on your behalf. Motive and intention matter. My name, not your gain, is basically the principle here. My name, not your gain. There's a story in Matthew chapter 25 that's about the sheep and the goats. And what's interesting about the sheep and the goats is that they both reacted the same. Jesus said, hey, when you gave me a cup of cold water, you visited me in prison, I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. The sheep and the goats both say, when did we see you? When did we see you do these things? And here's the difference. It's the true and false. The false were the ones who said, when did we see you? If we had seen you, we would have done something good. If we had known that was you, we would have stepped up to the plate. The other side, the sheep, are basically the true. They said too, when did we see you? They were simply giving the cup of cold water. They were simply feeding the hungry. They weren't trying to do it in order to impress. They weren't trying to say, oh, if we'd seen you, if we had known this was a true spiritual act, we would have gone and done it. Instead, the sheep do it automatically. And that's why he's saying this is the difference between the true and the false disciples. That their activity may look exactly the same, but their motive is not the same at all. That's pretty wild. That motive matters. That fruit matters. And so in this section, he's really calling us to question ourselves. Are we being true or false? Because what we tend to do is read this and go, man, we've got to just watch out for those false prophets. We need to also ask, am I a false prophet? We need to watch out for those who are not true disciples. Okay, am I a true disciple? Am I following the principles? It's a challenge because this is why people say, I'm not going to follow that particular belief because it's nothing but a bunch of hypocrites. How do they get that idea? It's because people are speaking truth, but not living truth. They're saying something that they're saying is true, but their lifestyle says that's false. I don't really follow that. So that's really the calling to this section of the true and false. Are we going to be true or false in our life? Are we going to be filled with love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control? Is that going to be what our life is about? Hey, if you got another minute, why don't you go to 1010lifeletter.com and sign up for the 1010 Life Letter. Be blessed.